And a good Thursday morning, football fans, you bird watchers. You've got Mac and Mac. That'd be him, John McMullen, and me, Jody McDonald, here with you for the next 2 hours, or at least I will be. Johnny Mac's got duties. He's got to get over to South Philly and watch the Eagles on a practice day. Johnny Mac, back-to-back practice day. Is this the first time they've gone back-to-back full practice days?
Yep, first time. So we'll see it today and tomorrow. Today's the first round. I assume they'll go harder today because they also have a Lincoln Financial Field practice on Sunday night. So my assumption is they'll back off a little bit on Friday and obviously have the off day Saturday. So then you have Lincoln Financial Field. So my guess is the pads will be on. It'll be a green practice, but we'll see. But, we'll see how it shakes out.
Green practice. Ooh, that's huge. We shall see if it's huge or not. But the Eagles are winding their way to get ready for the season opener, which is still a bit away. We've got a handful of preseason games and, of course, the all-important joint practices. We'll probably talk about that plenty next week. But today's practice, as you say, should be pad, should go green. That means close to 90 minutes. With new coaches on the staff and changes in personnel, this is a very similar to the team that went to the Super Bowl and came up just short against Kansas City Chiefs last year. Do you think that if he was being honest with you under the code of honesty, do you think Nick Sirianni would say at this stage, and it's certainly if the answer is no, you're going to catch up pretty quickly, but do you think he's achieved what he's wanted to in the first 10 days of practice here?
Just one real quick. Green means high intensity, so it's not the timing. It could be 55, it could be 90. Like day one was green as well, but it was 55 minutes. So
who judges high intensity?
Yeah, high intensity.
I'll
try
again. Who judges high intensity?
The head coach. The head coach. But that's how he sets it up. So anyway, I just wanted to make that clarification. Is he happy? I don't know. It's been kind of sloppy. We talked about that. Was he trying to fight complacency by being a little bit more vocal? He claimed he wasn't. That's just him. I think he's happy with the first team offense. I think he's very happy. I think he's happy with his first team defensive front. I think he's very happy with that. And then it kind of fills in from there. But as a coach, you're probably always a little bit unhappy, or you try to be, because you always want everything. Right. And there are always areas to improve. But it's evident this team's going to out-talent people. I've been talking about it for a while. They're just going to out-talent people. And, the offense and the defensive front is going to be able to make up for mistakes in other areas. And that's a nice luxury to have. So they're a good football team. I don't think the floor is too low, barring massive injuries. I mean, you always got to throw that caveat in there. Mm-hmm. You have a boatload of key injuries. That changes everything. But if they're relatively healthy, this team's going to be pretty good.
And to that end, Eagles have not had injuries here in camp. And I know it's just the first couple of days, and you don't want to overreact to anything one way or the other, but they got nobody hurt. Those guys who seem to be being held at practice or limited to practice, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but it seems to be more precautionary than, wow, they're actually hurt. They're going to be out for a while. They're going to miss a chunk of time, a significant amount of practice. The Eagles, to their credit again, because they have a specific plan in place where they believe less is more if you get the results from the trainer that you want. To this point, it's absolutely worked because they haven't had any significant injuries at all to start this season.
Yeah, I mean, they're very cognizant of and probably got emboldened by Joe Burrow, and they've even ramped it up this year. It's sort of practice, rest, and this will be the first time, as we say, from back-to-back practices, and even that, I don't think they're going 2 green practices back to back. I think they'll scale back one of those 2 and try to manage. And who knows? We might see the first maintenance days because it's back to back on that day too with all the veteran players. You remember how many of those there were last year. We haven't seen them because they're kind of built in this summer. We have practice and walkthrough, practice, off day, practice, walkthrough. So they kind of built it in. But now they have back to back practices Thursday and Friday. Here they have one grouping next week as well. So we'll see if the maintenance days show up. That could be a process. And the significant injuries, I always say, those are the luck injuries, the ACLs, the Achilles. You saw an Achilles with Patrick in Denver. I don't know how you prevent that kind of stuff, but the calf muscles like Joe Burrow. That's why I bring up the hamstrings, those strains. I think those are things the Eagles think they can manage, and so far so good. It seems like they're at least ahead of the curve when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Since you referenced it, see if I can pin you down a little bit here. Maintenance days, load management, call it what you want. Veteran guys not having to practice on either a full practice, green, yellow, indigo, or violet, whatever the coach judges it's going to be ahead of time, and or walkthroughs. We know the core 4 are going to get those. That would be the old guys, according to Jason Kelsey himself, Lane Johnson, Brandon Graham, and Fletcher Cox. Who else is going to qualify for maintenance days this year?
Well, they've always been very cognizant of Josh Sweat's history. They've always been very careful with him. That's why he's in that group, because going way back to his high school injury, which, could have been catastrophic. It was very significant. They've always been very careful with him. I'm trying to think other players. They Hassan Reddick because of his status, Slay because of his age, Bradbury, they might get in the mix, which is kind of a combination of sort of aging and status as well. Status can be a part of it, to be honest. They have to talk. I always say they have to talk Brandon into taking days off, but he seems more receptive to it ever since his Achilles injury. So that's typically the group of the younger guys. The one that stands out is Josh, and that's because of his prior history. And they've always been very careful with him. If you go every step of the way with his career, they've always been very careful with him.
All right, so you got 3 factors. Number 1 is actual age. Number 2 is injury history. And number 3 is status, that if you're a superstar player, that you might be accorded a little bit more break and get some downtime. Where's A.J. Brown fall onto that scale?
AJ might be in the status scale, but he's young enough to where he's not a type of guy is similar that likes to take days off. So, he might say, well, look, what is AJ 25? I'm fine. He might DeMonte as well. They're still so young, which is kind of frightening for the rest of the league because they're already proven to the point where in AJ's case, he's top 5 receiver in the league. They might lean on status, but he's the type of guy who would say, look, he's very cognizant. Obviously, you can look at him and say, okay, this guy's into physical fitness. He's not begging off doing stuff. So he hasn't been in that category, but I could see him graduating into the status category. No question about it. You probably have to talk him into taking a day off, though.
So some guys, it's a foregone conclusion. Like I said, the core 4, the guys who are well into their 30s and been here for a decade apiece. Are the others asked if they'd like a maintenance day? Are they suggested they're getting a maintenance day? Are they told they're getting a maintenance day? If you do know, as best you do, How is that decided upon?
Well, most are told and most gladly accepted, and say, but there are a few, and Brandon would be the best example. Like Brandon, until he never took a day off, never took a day off. Like when everybody else had the maintenance day, you can go back and look at the old injury report. He practiced because he said no, I'm not taking a day off. So status works two ways. You you can run the ship a little bit and say no thanks, but no. But yeah, most of them are just told, and most of them say, all right, I'll sit here in the baseball cap. Especially when it's 95. It's been pretty nice.
Yeah, I
It's
was
going
going
to
to
be
say,
pretty nice today.
last Friday was the only killer day
Yeah,
so far, right?
yeah. So but yeah, most are just like, all right, I'll watch, I'll take it
And
in.
and today is not supposed to be in the high 90s either. So we'll see if all are present and accounted for. All right, John, we're getting to that point in camp, and it's still early, but sometimes jobs are won early, and a guy gets a hold of a job and never gives it up. Coming into this year, Eagles had some positions where we knew there were going to be battles. Some for starters, some for backup position, but there were battles that wasn't line drawing. Here's the guys at this position. Here's the order they're going to play, and here's the order they're going to sub in if there's injuries and the like. And others have kind of been up for grabs. So I want to get your early take on a couple of positions that I think we can legitimately call battles. The first one is the one we probably talked about more than anything else, than as far as battles go, and that's right guard. You've been at every single practice that they have allowed you in. We know that as far as judging first team reps, there really hasn't been a battle. Cam Jurgens has gotten all of them. Steen has gotten no better than the second team reps. The coach has been kind of outspoken that the battle continues. It rages on, when evidenced by what's happened on the field, that really hasn't been the case. So I guess the way I'll ask you the question is, what would it take for Cam Jurgens to lose the battle at right guard?
Yeah, I don't know. That's been a strange one. I've said it pretty much to me. I've said it in the past. He's taken every first team rep, yet he's the one guy. Nick says, well, it's still a competition. Well, let's start the competition then. And maybe it'll come whenever Jason Kelsey, if and when he gets a maintenance day. I assume he'll get one in probably on Friday would be my guess. And we'll see if Cam moves to center and Tyler Steen takes over at right guard. Maybe that's where it starts. It's still early, and if it does start there, you still have the joint practices coming up with Cleveland and Indianapolis, which are probably going to be the most important days. Not probably, definitely. So maybe they're just starting it late. But until somebody gets a first team rep other than Cam Jurgens, I find it hard to believe that Cam Jurgens isn't going to be the right guard. I mean, he's played well. There hasn't been any noticeable mistakes. He hasn't been overwhelmed. First team offense has been humming, and he's part of it. So he looks like the right guard to me.
So Steen has been the backup as of right now, and you're right. When or if Jurgens is asked to move back over to center, we'll learn a little bit more. Has anyone gotten quote unquote third team reps at right guard? If so, who?
Yeah, I mean, third team has been Tyrese Robinson mainly at right guard. Jack Driscoll would be in that position in theory, but remember, he's the second team. And it's interesting what they've done with Jack Driscoll and Dennis Kelly. They had Dennis Kelly at left tackle. The last two practices, they've had Jack Driscoll at left tackle and Dennis Kelly at right tackle with the second team. So he's busy focusing on that. But Jack, obviously, they know can play the position, so they're not as concerned if they need to pull the ripcord, so to speak. They're not as concerned with him. So he would be the third guard, but he's not taking reps there because he's busy taking reps at both tackle positions. So for now, it's been Tyrese Robinson, who's one of the young guys, and he's actually played. He's got some experience in the NFL, but not really a threat to make the 53 practice squad potentially.
Right.
And he was around last year on the practice squad.
When we get a little closer, get a preseason game or two under our belts, we'll start to try and figure who are going to be those practice squad candidates if they're not going to be the 53. And I think because that position is a question mark, and Jurgens may go there and you won't miss a beat from when Isaac Seumalo was the right guard, but we got to see it first. I think there's a very good bet that they're going to have some depth on the offensive line on the practice squad, but we'll get to that. We got time to get to that. All right. The quote unquote other linebacker position. If we all believe that the Kobe Dean is going to be the strong side linebacker, the dot wearer on his helmet. The other linebacker position seemed to kind of be up for grabs. Nicholas Morrow was brought in as a free agent, put up a lot of tackles last year on a bad Bears defense, does have NFL experience, but has not wowed anybody in his NFL career. And in our Pro Football Focus rankings, which we relate to every once in a while, hadn't been really highly rated off the work he's done in Chicago. Not really wowed anybody in practice in the first couple of days here in Philadelphia either. And Christian Ellis has, going back to the OTAs and the first couple of days of practice here. That's a battle, John. I think that's to be determined. The question is, will the Eagles have nerve enough to put two guys out there as their starting linebackers? And we're not going to go to the big safety look just yet, just talking about the two linebackers. Christian Ellis has 20 some odd snaps under his belt. Kobe Dean has 30 some odd snaps under his belt for their entire NFL careers. They got nerve enough to go that young at linebacker to start the year?
Yeah, it's a good question. It doesn't, feel comfortable on paper. And Nick Morrow is the one guy who's got pretty extensive NFL experience. Now, Christian Ellis, it's interesting because he got the most first team reps. What day are we? Tuesday. But they also unveiled, as you mentioned a little bit there, the big nickel with three safeties on the field. So they got a lot of avenues they can go. A lot of people would argue none of them are good. But, I mean, Christian Ellis has earned, I think, the look, I should say. And I think if he plays well in those joint practices, he's probably going to win the job. But that's a long way to go. I think they kind of know what they have in Nick Morrow. He's going to be smart. He's going to know what to do, but maybe he doesn't have the physical gifts to stand out. So maybe they're using that to take a longer look at Christian Ellis and see if he can handle the workload, so to speak. That would be my guess. I wouldn't say because he took over pretty much and earlier in the week, Christian Ellis on the first team, I wouldn't say that's an indication he's won the job or even winning the job. I think it's one of those things where he's played to the point where the coaching staff has said, all right, let's see if he can handle it against the first team. And it wasn't great against the first team. He's been great against the second team and the third team, but it wasn't great against the first team. So, makes sense, right? I mean, those are Eagles got a good offense. It's a little bit more difficult to, if you talk about the pass coverage aspect of it, it's a little bit more difficult to cover Dallas Goedert than the other tight ends. So, that one is still, I think, a legitimate competition. And I think they want to see if Christian Ellis is for real, so to speak. And if not, then they'll default back to a player they know, probably not a high ceiling, but they know he's not going to embarrass himself out there, Nick Morrow.
All right. One other one I want to get in before I ask you about what you think Coach Sirianni is going to say today, because he speaks before practice and you got to run down there in the next 10 minutes. Wide receiver 5. All right. We know who the first two wide receivers are. Pretty damn good. The elite Quez Watkins is number 3. He's had a nice camp so far. And if someone thought Olamide Zacchaeus was just going to come in here and step right over him, probably not happening. But Zacchaeus will fill that backup slot role. They've got a bunch of guys on the roster who are wide receivers, including one guy who is part of the return teams. If you had to rank who's looked best out of all the wide receivers not named Zacchaeus, Watson, Smith, or Brown, who would you put at the top of the list?
Well, Britton Covey's got that job. Britton Covey's a lock to make this football team. If somebody's going to beat out somebody, they're going to win that 4th spot and sort of over. You got to jump over Covey. Covey's going to be here, period, end of sentence, because he is the punt returner, and he's improved as a receiver, although I don't think you're ever going to see him be relevant as a receiver. But I will say Avonte Maddox raved about him. He does look quicker. He does look more confident. He's really getting separation against the backup nickel corners. So he has improved in that aspect, but he's going to make the team. I mean, there's just no doubt about it.
Then if he's a lock, wide receiver 6, and do you think there's a chance they're going to keep 6 wide receivers?
No.
Could Olamide Zacchaeus not make the team?
Yeah, that's the more likely. Like if you're Deion Kane or you're some of the undrafted guys, Joseph Nada has been the most impressive. You got to beat out Olamide Zacchaeus for that 4th wide receiver slot. And I think it's possible. I mean, Olamide has been fine. He hasn't been bad or anything, but a couple things with Olamide. He's limited a little bit from a size perspective. He's not going to play outside a lot, so he's limited as a slot kind of only guy. And he's not he can return, but there's no way he's beating out Covey for that punt returning job. So there's no evidence of that. So he's a little bit more limited than guys that can play both inside and outside. So, I mean, Deion Kane clearly, but he was hurt. He's the one guy, got a little bit of an ankle, had to leave practice on Sunday, and didn't practice on Tuesday. But he's clearly the most ready to go of the bottom end receivers, as I would call them. But that's where the 16-man practice squad, like a lot of those guys, they're going to keep 2 or 3 of those guys on the practice squad. And I don't think there's going to be any concern whether it's Deion Kane or Joseph Nada or Jaden Hazelwood. You're going to get those guys through waivers, and you're going to be. So that's where you can manipulate the roster. Howie's a little bit good at it. But yeah, I'm very confident Britton Covey's going to be the 5th receiver on this team.
Fair enough. All right. Every single day when you go over, you got a full practice. You get to hear from a member of the coaching staff before practice actually gets underway. Through all the defense coordinator, the offense coordinator, and the head coach. Circling back to the head coach today, first question I asked was, do you think Nick Sirianni is happy with what they've accomplished so far in X amount of practice they have? I'm sure somebody will ask him that question today. What, if anything else, do you expect Sirianni to give you some enlightenment on?
That's a good question. Well, he can't say the pads aren't on. So, that answer's over. He can't go down that route. I guess he can still say it's an early sort of route. I plan on asking him about Cam again. If it is a competition, when is the competition going to start? That's if somebody gets to it before me, I'll go in a different direction. But that's one of the more interesting questions. And then, Nick's good when you get him talking about sort of Bill Belichick in that aspect. He's gonna defer to when you ask him who's playing well, he's going to defer to it's early, the pads aren't on, that kind of stuff. He's not going to throw guys under the bus. But if you ask him specific football questions, he'll go into sort of a dissertation. So that's what I try to do with him. Kenny Gainwell made an interesting point about running back pass protection. We were talking about that a lot. And he said they have a motto in the running back room that just listen to the damn center, which was kind of interesting. That's how much respect they have for Jason Kelsey, calling out protections and doing all that kind of stuff. So if you ask Nick about that, you'll get like a 10-minute answer. If you ask him, hey, how's Quez Watkins doing? You're going to get well, it's early, he's playing well, blah, blah, blah type of thing.
Understood. And glad to see. I saw your post on the running backs. They maybe need to listen to Kelsey a little bit better, because I told you yesterday, I think it was BLG had a rundown, watched that specific drill and said, Eagles running back, not great.
You know, we talked about that. I did look it up because nobody talks about running back pass protection. Swift actually graded really well in Detroit as a pass protector. So, but yeah, that's something I'll defer to BLG there, because I didn't get a good look at that drill that he was watching. But yeah, the other guys that have been here have not been great at it. So maybe DeAndre, because I think it was 4th PFF as a pass protector. That's pretty good.
Yeah,
so,
that's very good.
Yeah.
So that will potentially boost his usage this year. Yeah, probably not. They'll base it on this is a forward-thinking offense that's thinking about putting up 35, 42 points. They're not going to go into protective mode as often as maybe some other teams. All right, last question for you before we let you run. I think it was back at the owners' meetings, and maybe even done it, maybe it was the second time, maybe double dipped, that kind of out of nowhere, unprovoked, unquestioned, Nick Sirianni decided to sing the praises of one Trey Sermon. And then during the OTAs, he went to bat specifically for Quez Watkins with the whole, he hears you guys say he stinks. Well, I'm telling you, he doesn't stink. He's killing it this practice.
By the way, I don't know anybody who covers the team that said Quez stinks. That's not how we talk. That's how Gannon got in trouble when he said we're calling for his firing when he was 8-0, where they were never, when they lose their first game, whatever he said. But he got that wrong. He got the record wrong. Certainly nobody asked him about getting fired. I mean, conflating the fan base with the reporters never ends well.
Nick might have covered himself. I think he just left it as you guys. And that could have meant the individuals who are there asking him questions like yourself on the beat. It could have meant the Eagle fan. He didn't specifically say media members. He should have said fans if he meant fans, but he just went kind of open-ended there in his major defense of Quez. Will there be a surprise guy today that either unprovoked, or maybe it comes off a question and you're a little surprised by the over-the-top praise thereof? Will there be an Eagle player that Nick Sirianni will take the back of to an extent that is somewhat expected?
We might get a defensive guy to try to bolster that side of the ball. We might get a Mekhi Gardner for being physical. Who knows? That can go either way. You could say, why are you trying to hurt the guys in practice? Or you can say, ooh, he's showing up. That can go either way. Maybe a Jordan Davis, because he's been so. Maybe a Kayvon Wallace. You're going to get a Kayvon Wallace question, because that came out of freaking nowhere. Kayvon Wallace all of a sudden is relevant at safety, and I don't think many of us saw that coming. So he's opened some eyes, whether Sean decides. So maybe I'll pick Kayvon Wallace because, that was a surprise.
All right, and I lied. I got one more question for you. What fellow beat guy is going to make John McMullen certainly frown, if not groan, with a Kelly Green question?
Kay Adams, she's going to be down there. That is a TV question. So yeah,
Kay Adams is going to be there.
Yeah, Kay's going to be there, so you
Yeah.
might want to go down, Jody.
Yeah,
So
I can't. I got to stay here. That's not good for me.
That's a TB question. So, but
And
Kay will make it. Kay, I won't frown. So I got to turn that back because Kay's Kay.
Yeah,
so I won't.
If you frown at her, somebody's going to question you.
Yeah. So maybe I'll just go with one of the other TB guys. So pick your
Johnny Clark. Johnny Sunshine.
John's a good friend.
He loves the Kelly Green, I'm sure. Quickie on Kay Adams. I've never met her. I've seen her on TV thousands of times, but never. Is she tall?
No.
She wears big heels?
Yeah,
she's got to go with the 4-inch spikes.
I don't know. I'll report. Part of
you're going to want to be part of Birds 365 tomorrow when McMullen's back to give us Kay Adams footwear update.
You're going to see a bunch.
I need that information. Now, I have to have that, McMullen.
Now I'm too old, but and I'm married, but you're going to see a bunch of these morons.
I'm older and more married, but who the hell cares? Kay Adams footwear is important.
You're going to see a bunch of these morons upgrade their wardrobe today. Guarantee it.
Oh, you think so?
Guarantee it. Yeah, guarantee.
They know that Ms. Adams in the house. All right, good on them. All right, JM, safe travels over to the NovaCare complex.
All right, thank you, Jody, and thanks, Mark. I see you in the green room.
Farzetta filling in for Johnny Mac again today. So McMullen will be back tomorrow. We'll do the full bore Mac and Mac Birds 365, but instead you get Mac and Mark Farzetta jumping in, joining me next here on Birds 365.